Crosspost from RMC, by myself, boss's boss threatens to fire me, I accept and get himself and his friends fired due to many requests, cross-posted from our malicious compliance. This whole story happened in 2021 and ended in October. Damn, time flies, and it is something that puts a Cheshire smile on my face. Warning: this is a very extensive story. Grab some popcorn. Background ignore. If you like, in January 2021, I began working for a very big American company in Europe that was and is in the energy sector. At the factory plant I began working at, the parts of gas turbines get assessed for restoration and reworked so they can get used again. Each single part would cost several thousand when produced new, and hold for like a decade or so. Reworking cost like 1/4 of that, and the part would be good for another 8 to 10 years, with more inspections of course for safety. The customers would pay like half or 3/4 of the cost of a new part, and since we talk 28,000 per single part, and a gas turbine containing thousands of pieces, we speak several million for each gas turbine. Customer would save a good chunk, and of course, the company was sitting on a golden goose. Over the decades, that meant that the facility where the stuff was reworked had an absolute uncontested income, without much of competition, since the parts were their own design and production, and a win-win for customer and company. Over time, that led to the problem that competence, invention, or even honesty were not needed by the management of the facility anymore. As long as the workers sticked to the already developed and tested processes and did their job, money would keep flowing in regardless what the office did or did not. You can see where this is going. Setup somewhat important, so I was hired there as part of quality control. Specifically, I was to operate an 3D computer-managed measuring machine. Gas turbines get, as you can imagine, pretty hot and spin fast, and a decade of heat combined with dynamic stress has the nasty habit to deform stuff. Cannot have that for sure, so you have to measure the stuff really precisely so that the production knows what section of which piece needs reworking, or if a piece is too out of form to be used again at all. The operation of such a machine is not too complicated. Put the piece into bracket, clamp it down, load the correct model, and start the program. You get the measurement report then, as in text file, in Excel, as well as a PDF. The pieces, usually rotary blades, nearly always came in sets 24 to 216, depending on the size. When all are measured, you compile all the reports the machine made into one Excel with a somewhat complicated method. Was not hard. I learned all that in a week. That machine was immensely important for the facility, running in 2 to 3 shifts per day, 6 days per week. Like 80 of all pieces that went through the reworking process had to be measured at least twice. As nearly anyone with a technical background can guess, operating a machine and understanding what it is actually doing are two big different shoes. When I started, there were only 3 guys that understood the machine properly, as well as a technician, Vladimir, who could actually fix codes or reprogram a 3D model if there was a problem. Vladimir, however, was the technician for the entire facility, very busy guy, and when he had to come over, his time would need to be paid by the department, something the bosses did not encourage, so to say. Of the 3 guys who knew the machine, Antonio is important. He had been working there for a few centuries at least, knew every nook and cranny, and, while being a simple worker, if shit went wrong, he was the guy you turned to. He had a bit of a short temper and a very blunt language, but he was honest, open, and very fair. I, myself, am not the most social person, always held back, with a brutal honesty, and I take my professional cold attitude a bit too serious, I guess. In general, If people share my principles of honesty, fairness, and taking responsibilities serious, then we get along greatly. But with people that are less trustworthy, I basically turn to an ice block. Not perfect, I know, but hey, I do not work in retail for good reason. So thing is, despite some heated arguments, Antonio and me really got along swimmingly. What no one knew was that Antonio had, over the decades, collected such a backlog of days off, overtime, and whatnot, that he could retire 2 years early. And he was 63. He had decided to groom me as his successor, and began teaching me every little detail about the measuring machine, how to fix stuff, how to do proper maintenance, why it did certain stuff, and so on. He was a perfectionist, but so am I, so I really appreciated it. What I noticed in my first week in the company was the biggest problem there. The facility had a massive problem with cliques, clans, and little circles. If you were part of the correct clique, you could do what you want and remain untouchable. If you are not, well, your credit goes to anyone but you, and you are a fine scapegoat. I did not cared much about it, be honest. I am a bit of a rule fanatic, and stick to them even when everyone else ignores them. For me, this was a well-paying job, with a horrible commute, 4 hours in one direction, so I wanted to stay there for as long as I could, earn my money, and then just take the next job. There was a fourth Jaius, who was operating